Good afternoon. I'm KPS Malik, and we are starting a session on customized cataract surgery. And cataract surgery, doctors, patient, the talk that if you can do a cataract surgery which can take care of the astigmatism also pre-existing, or don't create astigmatism during the surgery, so that should be the best customized surgery. And of course, then you have the SICS and phacoemulsification and femtocataract surgery. This country, like our country, has National Society, the National Program of Control of Blindness, NPCB. NPCB receives the input that nearly 70% cataract surgery in India is done by SICS or extra capsular, in fact, even with the sutures still. Because people here, speakers or mostly attending the conferences also, are from metro cities, so where the phaco surgery is important and phaco surgery is norm. But if you go to the smaller towns, the issue is not same. Smaller towns, phaco machine itself is a, besides being costly, its components being costly, its disposables being costly, and like in America, I saw that they were changing phaco tip after every cataract surgery. So we are not doing. There are many issues to that how do you sterilize the phaco tip after each surgery. Any of you here can say that how do they sterilize the tip or the needle of the phaco after every surgery? Do they do it or they don't do it? Do you really all do it or nobody does? Nobody does. You do? So nobody does.
No.
You do?
Yeah.
After free cataract surgery?
Autoclaved.
Tell me.
Yeah.
So you have to have autoclaved 100.
We have, like, I was working at a major hospital, so they had lots of sets. So after every case, the tip and the sleeve, everything was changed.
So this is not the general condition in the country. I know that very well in the best of the institutions also. I used to do in Safdarjung that I'll put it in the spirit swab just after finishing the cataract, and the tip I'll cover with a spirit swab. So 70% alcohol also is a good sterilizer. In fact, removing it, suppose you have in a clinic just 2 tips, and you have, say, 4 tables or 3 tables, and solo surgeon will have definitely not many tips that every time he will change it and he has time for it, and he will keep 4 or 5 tips as sterilized. Every tips these days must be costing 7,000-8,000. Our days it was like those days when we started in something, it was 4,000 something. So it must be around 6,000-7,000. And of course we cannot throw that it after every surgery and then...
Dr. Sanjay, you can come and join.
Sanjay,
basically, I think this IC is more so for which condition, which type of surgery you should choose, whether phaco or SICS. So we are not against any of the surgeries. We want everybody to learn all kinds of surgeries. So that is the main, the point of discussing in this particular instruction course. I think we can start the talk, sir.
And someone who is doing phaco things also can comment on phaco, femtoseconds also. So we start with the conditions called small pupil become sometimes difficult, often difficult, sometimes it's always difficult to manage it in SIC also and phaco also. So we have Professor S.P. Singh from Allahabad, the director of National Institute of Ophthalmology, Lucknow, the Allahabad, and he is a principal of Lucknow, the Allahabad Medical College, and Dean of Medical Sciences, Allahabad University. So Dr. S.P. Singh will speak about how to manage the cataract patient with small pupil.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malik sir, and Dr. Ruchi, and Dr. Chaudhary, and good afternoon to every one of you. And this session is definitely, as Dr. Ruchi already said, that there are certain situations in which SICS sometimes is better to manage. But the definitely, of course, the FECO and the SICS both are, especially if the high volume surgery needed, especially to cover the backlog and the institution. So everybody should learn everything, not only to FECO. You have to sometime it needs the FECO may needs to conversion into the SICS. So the basic principle everybody should know and should learn. I am just going to speak on this SIC and small people. Earlier in the morning session, I had also the session on small people, but in this session, I have some, I'm going to display some other cases I'm going to repeat. So some difficult cases. So, now, what happens? Abhi to aa raha na.
यहाँ के बैठो यार, दो चार
अभी
accessibility में display पीछे है कंट्रोल सेंटर
मिलके ही ना दे सेवन कहीं लिखा ही नहीं है इन्होंने
हाँ ढूंढना इसको ये so difficult यार
नहीं लिखे तो कहीं इंसिग्निया लगाया ही नहीं 7 नंबर
मैं हेल्प वाला भी नहीं जानता
वो भी नहीं आता आप अरे क्या मामला है ये भी ना
चल रहा है आगे कर लो थोड़ा सा
So,
चलो उसमें चलो
as you know, small people pose a
आप
great
लोगों के
challenge.
आने का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया क्योंकि इसको ढूंढना समझ लीजिए चंदा मामा को ढूंढना है हॉल ढूंढते ढूंढते आधा घंटा लगा अब नाउ यू हैव डॉक्टर एसपी सिंह एंड थैंक्स टू ऑल द एमडीआई पीपल एंड ऑल अदर ऑडियंस दोज हु कुड फाइंड दिस हॉल थैंक यू सो मच
Thank you so much. So I'm going to speak on the management SICS in small people. Small people usually pose a great challenge to the offense because of, and certain situations there is visibility is very less and very difficult to dilate the people where there are different devices by which you can successfully do the surgery. So I'm going to show some of the videos of different situations, different cases. You can see this is the case of this post-uveitic case in which a lot of posterior synechiae is there. So only in this case, if you do the synohyalisis, then you can separate you can make the pupil a little bit circular, and then still in the margin there are some membrane is there. So in this case, if you use any expanding devices, the pupil may damage. So I just educated my own technique, pull and push method, so that the pull the iris are pushed in one particular quadrant and expose one particular area. Then where you are going to work like this, in this case, I'm just stretching the pupil and pulling the pupil in one particular quadrant, and then I'm going to make the larger size rather than over the size of the pupil. And then even the small pupil, how you can remove, but that is bimanual technique, in which lift the nucleus pole at one point and then slightly rotate it. By rotational movement, you can bring in such a small pupil, the large nucleus can be delivered very easily, and the rest of the fusor you can see, you can wash the cortex, and then IOL can be implanted well in this small people. Again, see, this is again this small pupil having lot of posterior synechiae along the pupillary membrane. Then you have to cut the pupillary membrane along the border of this pupil with the help of micro scissors all around. And if you don't cut, what happens if you stay in this condition? Then definitely the pupil may become irregular and then may remain as such in the post-operative as well. So still pupil is not dilated sufficiently. In this case, I did the stage pupilloplasty. Still is not dilated as it is required. So again, with the help of Y-shaped hook, just push the iris 1 pupil quadrant, and now I am pulling at this side so that you can expose the capsule, entire part of the capsule, and then gradually make the rhexis of larger size, and then even this again do the minimum hydrodextration, and then see you can slightly pull the iris and then lift it slightly, go with the help of C-square, lift it, and then gradually this bimanual technique, this very much useful to bring the nucleus in the anterior chamber by this bimanual technique. And then in this, even this small pupil, you can see how earlier the pupil was so irregular. You can see still we were able to maintain the size of the pupil without much damage to the pupil. See, this is a case of semi-rigid pupil in which the pupil is very small. And this I decided to do the surgery by using this iris hook. This should be equidistantly placed at 4 points. So you can, just after using this iris hook, we can just expose dilate the pupil and expose it, then complete the rhexis, and then again with this much pupil, we can very easily bring the nucleus in the end chamber, and then, but it has a disadvantage that, it needs the different four ports, and again, once we will just pull it more, then what will happen, then it is sometimes difficult to accommodate the nucleus in the anterior chamber, but the iris has an advantage that whatsoever the dilatation you need, you can adjust with the help of this iris hook leg. This is the advantage, and very simple to use. Then again, you see this hard nucleus, big nucleus. In this case, very small pupils and a rigid pupil. Again, it requires this use the very simple. This is the Gupta ring with this IOL injector. Very easily you can see insert in the injector, and very easily we can inject in the anterior chamber, engage the iris. You can see it takes hardly 1 minute, and 1 to 2 minutes you can engage, and then in another 12 o'clock by going through this side port, you can engage the iris, and you can watch this much big nucleus can be easily handled and bring in anterior chamber, and throughout the surgery, this ring is not going to disturb, and even this you can see this much large nucleus can be accommodated very well. If you use the this iris hook sometime, because anterior chamber because solo as the iris comes forward in iris hook, so this is the advantage, but the disadvantage that its size is, it depends upon the size expansion is much more, to sometimes the micro sphincter tear may take place, as you can see in this case also, though SIs can be performed very well, but some places the sphincter tear is there. Another case, so to avoid the damage to the sphincter, that is also very important to maintain the size of the pupil, and shape and size of the pupil is very important. So in this case, even it is very small pupil. You can see this is my own innovative technique, that is push and pull method, in which with the help of Y-shaped hook, and then simultaneously both the hand rotate it and simultaneously complete the rhexis in such a small pupil. And now with the help of this curved C-square hook, and then again with the Y-shaped hook, push in the periphery and complete, you can see that the large rhexis can be made in such a small pupil. Hydrodissection very, very important too, but you have to be very gentle, otherwise no capsular rupture may takes place, blood, that is capsular blood may takes place. So you can see by biopsy you can remove the nucleus in such a small pupil. You can see the pupil, its shape, everything is maintained without, there is no cushion to damage the inspector. So at the post-operative, you can maintain the size of the pupil, you can see. And this is another similar case, just to demonstrate. This is important. If you learn, this will be very much helpful. And ultimately, you can provide the good vision to the patient without any problem of post this after dilated pupil to prevent any glare, photophobia, etc. So again, just to show the, if you know the technique, if you take the precaution, you may complete the SICS in such a small people, where in such type of small people, the phaco is not possible, but the SICS can be done very easily. Once in phaco, definitely the dilatation is required. Sometimes if you dilate much more, so the sphincter, some amount of the sphincter may damage, and that may remain, sometime may remain permanent. Dilated pupil, post-operative dilated pupil. So this is the advantage of the SICS in this situation where the pupil is small and you want to maintain the shape of this pupil and without damaging to the sphincter. Thank you very much.
Professor Singh, sometime when it is really that difficult, is it advisable that like I do broad aortectomy on the upper part, little kind of a figure, keyhole type,
You are right, sir.
and remove the lens and then suture it.
Definitely the removal of the nucleus without damage to the capsule is very, very important. So we have to, if you want to prevent this kind of further complication, then keyhole aortectomy is very important. And then, the iris can be repaired, reconstruct people, the pupiloplasty can be done very easily with Sipson-Knot technique or the Dr. Amar Gawal innovative, that is a single pass ortho, so that can be done. So
Any knot will do. 1 or 2 knots in the iris will make it round, and then you will get quite a bit space to remove the nucleus. In fact, so without struggling, you will get.
Another option, definitely there are so many options. Iris surgery, different kind of iris surgery can be performed to dilate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you learnt about the small incision, the surgery when you have a small pupil, then can be dealt. Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary also is running out, or what? His plane is? Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary will be speaking now. Chandelier illumination in corneal opacity. So you know that corneal opacity, finding the cataract for phaco or SICS is difficult. But if you have a lateral illumination and then you can see the things from the illumination, and chandelier illumination is one tool. I don't know cost-wise, it costs hundreds of thousands or lakhs, I don't know that. So he will show you how he does that.
Thank you, Dr. Malik, for this invite. And like Dr. Malik said, that a corneal opacity, especially a large, dense, or a diffuse corneal opacity, is a challenge in doing a phaco. So many people resort to other techniques to do, but in a phaco, if you can't see the rexes happening and you can't see the details of your surgery, you are likely to end up in a problem, especially a PC rent. So lots of techniques have been tried, but one of the techniques which really gives us an advantage is the chandelier light technique. So basic principle, when you are going to do a phaco in a corneal opacity, is that you need a strong retro illumination. Strong retro illumination, not oblique illumination that we are used to. So, sources of retro illumination can be the microscope light, which is the weakest, and it is good for mild corneal opacities. Another source could be a limbal illumination with a strong fiber light. This is better for mild to moderate corneal opacities. And then people worked on the chandelier light as a source of strong retro illumination, and we found it to be an excellent tool for such situations. I'll show you a situation. Now here, I'm going to show you the interplay between oblique and retro illumination, so you will understand the basic principle. So right now what you're seeing is retro illumination. And this is oblique illumination. See the difference in your clarity. Now from oblique, I'm slowly changing to retro illumination, and I'm decreasing the oblique illumination. And now I'm totally on retro, and I'm increasing the retro illumination. And see the clarity of the tissues now. So you can make out how illumination plays a role in your phaco surgery. I do most of my cases in retro illumination as a routine, and here I also use an additional tool in corneal opacities, and this is how I'm going to show you. So chandelier light assisted MICS with corneal opacity. So here we have a diffuse corneal opacity, pretty dense. I'm sure doing a phaco here would be difficult. So I use a pars plana approach and put in a chandelier light. The chandelier light is usually used by the retina people. Since we have retina in-house, we could do it. And switching off all other lights, including the microscope light, you can see how I can comfortably observe the anterior capsule. And I'm doing a regular anterior capsular rhexis with the needle. And I can also do it with the rhexis forceps. So I've transformed from the needle to the rhexis forceps. And I can complete my rhexis comfortably. I really don't feel the limitations of that dense corneal opacity which is diffuse in this eye. Now see the effect when I go to oblique illumination and back to retro. Can you make out the difference? In that oblique illumination, I couldn't actually see anything. In retro, I can visualize the structures I'm working on. I can do hydrodissection, delineation, complete the fluid wave, turn around the nucleus. Again, a glimpse of oblique. I put in a malignant ring to keep the pupil dilated. I can do a chop in oblique illumination. You see, I'm doing a chop because chops are pretty safe thing because you're well away from the posterior capsule and you are so much trained to do a chop that even with limited viewing capacity, you can do a chop. But see that sudden change. See how it looks in a strong retro illumination. It looks almost like a heavenly intervention. Totally a different panorama. The nucleus is shining with a different color, and the gaps between the nucleus is shining through with a different bright pink color. And I can do all my chops in the bag. I have not encountered any problem in the chops, and now I will remove one piece and emulsifying it. And as you remove these pieces, the light of retro illumination shines through as if the sun is shining through a break in dense clouds. It's a beautiful looking picture. It's something so new and novel that for the first time you see it, you are enchanted not merely by the surgery, but by what you see with your eyes, which you have never seen before. A totally new perspective. So you pick up each piece, hold it, emulsify it, step by step, all the pieces. Now I'm changing the light illumination to show you the changes I see in my perception of the nucleus. So now I've reduced the illumination of my chandelier light, and I see a different color of the nucleus. Right now, again, I've changed to increasing the intensity, and you could see the change in colors. So you can choose the right intensity of the chandelier light to give you the right contrast that you require to do a phacoemulsification in the bag. All this phacoemulsification is happening in the bag, the chops, and I am just bringing it up in the pupillary plane and emulsifying it. I'm not bringing it near the cornea. And what seemed to be a very difficult surgery is unfolding as a routine phaco surgery with routine steps. The last piece ready to go in. So, and now I've come to the oblique illumination and see my clarity, and I come to the retro illumination and see my clarity of the epinucleus. So epinucleus looks like something like a jellyfish. Epinucleus gone, now the cortex. And now if you see, for the first time, I've seen my rhexis margin. Till now, I was assuming this is where my rhexis margin is during surgery. For the first time, I saw the rhexis margin. I'm removing the malignant ring. In goes the lens, either way in oblique or in retro. That's not a challenge. And what was supposed to be a very difficult surgery has turned out to be a routine phacoemulsification. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, so that was a wonderful technique for doing cataract surgery in phacoemulsification and with such an extensive corneal opacities. But of course, it will not work, I think, in leukomatous opacities. It's only for nebular or macular corneal opacities that it's going to work.
Very dense leukomatous, it may not
Because the
percolate.
light will be reflected.
If it is white, if it is in the center, you can do it.
You can still do it, yes.
Yeah. So I think, sir, you can keep the discussion later because I have an IC at 4 o'clock, so I have to rush. So maybe the question answer we can shift. Is it all right, sir? So.
Sanjay Chaudhary is a legend now, and I'm happy to tell you all that he belongs to Allahabad and he studied in St. Joseph's College.
Thank you, sir. Aapki nagri.
Now we have a topic again, a very important, subluxated cataract, and then doing the surgery of cataract. It is printed in my name, I think by mistake. It was meant for Professor Ruchi Goel because his cases are hers mostly. And she will show you some methods of like you can handle the subluxated cataract with some kind of rings and nuts and bolts, something to make the safe surgery of the subluxated cataract. Phaco or SICS, both I think she can show.
Good afternoon, everyone. So whenever we are dealing with subluxated cataracts, the most important thing is one should first assess the etiology, whether it is a congenital, that is ectopia lentis, where rest of the zonules are pretty much strong, or it is post-traumatic where you may have other problems as well, like angle recession, or there may be other trauma-related complications, or it may be a pseudo-exfoliation where you're going to have a progressive subluxation. So every patient is going to be different and one has to decide using these devices accordingly. Suppose we are dealing with an exfoliation, pseudo-exfoliation, you don't expect that the remaining zonules are going to last in the times to come. So you need something to fix the bag itself. Now, these are the various devices here in this picture, and you can see the commonest device that is being used by all of us is the CTR, that is the capsular tension ring. Then there are devices with eyelets which are tied on to the sclera. It may be a single eyelet or it may be a double eyelet, that is the double Sioni. Recently now there is another segment called capsular tension segment, which I find it more useful because it is a very small device, goes through a very small port and does not injure the zonules while you insert. So this is one of my favorites. Now, whenever you have a subluxation, say to about 4 o'clock hours, you can go in for a CTR. Now, CTR can be inserted either before you are doing a phacoemulsification or after you have finished your phacoemulsification. So this is just to show how you put a CTR. I have removed the phaco clip because that is the usual way that we are doing a phacoemulsification. Once the CTR is in place, you just have to push it, ensure that the CTR goes into the bag and it does not fall in, one of its parts does not fall into the sulcus. Otherwise, you may end up dislodging the CTR into the vitreous. After that, you do a routine phacoemulsification. In this patient, there was also iridodialysis which was repaired. This is again a patient of trauma with the anterior capsular rupture. Now, mind you, all these devices have to be put into the bag. So I created a rhexis a little away from the area where the anterior capsule was torn, did a routine, this was I think an SICS, a very soft nucleus, so whatever you do, phacoaspiration or SICS, it does not matter. So what is important is that you should have minimum turbulence in the chamber. And now I created a smaller rhexis so that I have an intact rhexis. Now this is a single Sioni which is being placed. So this is a partial thickness scleral flap being raised. And this Sioni, you tie on the eyelet to this straight needle, and this eyelet goes and sits in the sulcus. You push in this Sioni device in, and then after that, remember your rhexis size is small, so don't try to push in a PMMA lens, go in for a foldable lens. So I have used a foldable IOL, and you insert it directly into the bag, no pushing and pulling and dialing in these kind of cases because your zonules are already compromised. So choice of the surgery is this is how you fix the device. Now this is another patient where you see there is a nearly about 180-degree subluxation. So here there is a risk of the entire bag lens complex falling down. So you can use the iris retractors to hold the bag in place. And then there are some cases where you have extensive subluxation, where I think sir will show you the how you do a secondary IL in these patients. So this is a case with more than 180-degree subluxation. In these patients, there is a chance that while you are performing the surgery, this whole lens may fall into the vitreous. So one has to be extra careful. So what I have done is, I have already pre-marked my areas to fix IL. I'm going to do an ICC. I'm not going to do a SICS per se. So what I do is, I place an infusion cannula so that my lens is pushed upwards. So these are the pre-placed partial thickness scleral flaps which I have created. And you can see the lens is quite unstable and is just ready to fall. One mistake that is done. Now what happens is, before you enter, you must make, I'm using a ab externo technique. So this is the tunnel being dissected. So while you have, your eye has still, it's not hypotenuse once you enter. So you must mark and make these entries. This is a infusion cannula which is placed 3.5 millimeter from the limbus. And this will now push the nucleus up once we open the section. Now, this is a straight needle on 9-O-proline, which is placed 1.5 millimeter from the limbus. And this is inserted nasally. I just pre-place it. This is a 26 gauge needle inserted temporally. Now, before you enter, you place these needles because later on it becomes very difficult to insert these in a hypotenuse eye. After that, you enter with the anterior, with the keratome, and see the hydropressure, it pushes the nucleus out. So the chance of lens drop or nucleus drop is averted. This is followed by anterior vitrectomy. At this point of time, you can put off the infusion cannula because so much fluid is leaking that it tends to push the vitreous also out. And you put off the infusion cannula. And these are the steps to do scleral fixation. I'll just skip these steps because sir will show it in the secondary IL. And I'll just see if there is anything more in this one. So this is just the IL. I think these steps will be shown by sir. I'll go to the next video. So if you have a case where you have a subluxation along with the lens coloboma, as in this patient, we had a case with bilateral subluxation with the lens coloboma. In the first eye, I tried doing a SICS and I'll show you what problems I faced. So this is a patient where I thought SICS is going to be easier, but what I realized was when you have a lens coloboma, actually the zonules are also missing at that area. So this is a partial thickness scleral flap I created for fixing the Sioni. And once I finished my rexes, I tried doing a hydrodissection, but despite multiple waves, the hydrodissection was not complete, but because what is happening is the capsule is also kind of bean shaped. So there is no place for the nucleus to actually rotate. So I kept pushing and pulling the nucleus so that it would rotate, and finally I ended up doing an intracapsular cataract extraction. So after doing this particular eye, I realized that if I have to take out this nucleus, it has to be in pieces. So in the other eye, I actually did a phacoemulsification and I got away with it. So not all these things, every surgery has to be tailor-made, and one has to decide what particular device has to be used and what technique has to be used. So just to summarize, if it is a superior 4 o'clock hours subluxation, you can go in for a CTR. Inferior up to 3 o'clock hours, you can go for CTR. Inferior subluxations are more dangerous, so one has to be a little careful. Anywhere between a 3 and 6, my choice nowadays is a capsular tension segment, which I combine with a CTR. And a CTR is available in an injector form also. A very cheap injector is available by Madhu Instruments, 200 rupees, and it goes right into the bag. And anything between more than 6, less than 9 clock hours, CTS with a CTR, and if it is more, then it is better not to waste your time, just go directly for a scleral fixated IOL. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Ruchi, and you have seen that looks difficult, but again, that expertise and the experience and the method of these rings. So in fact, you can learn to do the CTR rings, and you can even before bringing the nucleus out, when you have done hydro, you have done the rexis, you can insert the rings before nuclear delivery. That is much safer, but you have to see that it remains within the bag, and you can do it after that also. So Dr. Ruchi has to go at 4 o'clock, so we are giving her again the mic for...
Sorry, I have an IC at 4 o'clock. नहीं वो प्रणव खड़ा हुआ था ना, sorry.
Pranav can wait. Pranav is young man. He can wait till night. So we have pre-existing RK. The RKs were done few years back, and they were done in hundreds and thousands. And I have seen blinding of the children by RKs. So she will put IUL in person with RK. FACO or SICS, I don't know that.
Display नहीं आ रहा उधर. Screen change कर दिए. Yeah. So yeah, thankfully the RK is now no longer practiced, but we still are getting cases, and at least in our generation we would continue to have these cases which have been done earlier. And now the challenge here is the IOL power calculation and the surgical technique both. Now what is different between the post-LASIK patient and RK patient is that both the front and the back of the cornea are changed by RK incisions, and the typical lens calculation formula will not work, and we tend to get lower IOL powers. And also post-operatively, there will be a temporary hyperopic shift due to swelling of these corneal incisions. Many of, in fact, surgeons face opening up of these RK incisions during the surgery, and there are leaky wounds. I have recently seen one of the surgeons coming back again and again suturing the RK incisions. So these things are really difficult. What we need to do is that we need to use a device like Pentacam, which is estimating both the anterior and the posterior corneal curvatures to estimate our IOL power. And this is the ASCRS online calculator where you can feed in all these values, and you get a reasonably correct calculation of IOL power. Suppose you do not have an access to Pentacam, then what you can do is, if you just have the anterior K readings, then you can use a combination of IOL master, your ultrasonic calculations, and you can take an average of all these. But of course, ideal would be to take the posterior float in consideration also. Now, what is another modification which has been suggested is that if there are 4 cuts of RK, then you add 0.5 to 1 diopter. If there are 8 RK cuts, then you add 1 to 1.5 diopters. If 12 cuts and beyond, then you can add at least 2 diopters to your estimated IOL power calculation. Now, this is just a video. You can understand that doing SICS is more or less out in this patient. There are, I think, 24 RK cuts in this patient. Now, my problem is where to place my incision. So, instead of going for a clear corneal, I decided to go for a posterior limbal. These incisions have to be banged within the 2 cuts so that I do not open up my incisions. The other problem I faced was that between the 2 cuts, there was no place to even place my chopper. So I had to use a dialer, though this nucleus was hard, so this, even the MVR blade entry is difficult. Rest, of course, is the method is almost similar to what you do in the routine phacoemulsification. Another thing you have to understand that these patients are going to be high myopes, so their scleral rigidity is going to be low. And instead of going for a stop and chop technique, it is better to go for direct chop in these patients. So this is a posterior limbal incision, and this is the phacoemulsification, and like any other case where you do a direct chop, this is a similar process, nothing different from other cases. Just that you should avoid lot of turbulence in the chamber because, as I said, these incisions may open even during the surgery. So thankfully, nothing happened in this case. I was very careful not to move my phaco, and once I entered, I tried to finish everything in one go, not to fiddle too much with any of these incisions. Again, the IOL implantation, because some of the IOLs, their cartridges are, you need to enlarge it to 3.2 millimeters. So you have to be careful what IOL you are using so that they go through this incision. You don't need to enlarge them. So these are small tips which you need to plan out beforehand and before you do any of these procedures. The other option is that if you don't want to go in for a phacoemulsification, you can actually go in for a basically ECC, because SICS in this, if I would try and make a tunnel within the RK incisions, I am going to end up opening them. So it is better that you then directly go to an ECC rather than doing an SICS. So I can skip this video, nothing much. The IOL, yeah. The end, in the end, if you think that because remember this incision is not corneal, it is almost towards the sclera, it's not purely scleral also. So if required, one must suture this wound, because if you do, your post-surgery, what you usually do is that you hydrate the cornea. Now here, if your incision is far posterior, you may not be able to hydrate it properly and create a watertight seal. So if required, you must put a suture at the end of the surgery. So the take-home message is that the IOL power calculation using, and the K has to be central, so it is better to go for the 2 millimeter and 3 millimeter central K rather than taking a larger diameter. And the recent formula like the Hagezel, Sharma's and Barrett-True K are to be used. Another important point is that patients here nowadays, they come with the idea that they all must have, especially a patient who has undergone RK would not like to wear glasses. So first thing they'll ask is, can I go for a multifocal IOL? So that is an absolute no. No more multifocal IOLs for these patients. As it is, you're not too sure because you may have post-operative cylinders. Still, people have started using toric IOLs in RK patients also. But then again, you have to counsel the patient that there may be a surprise. You can never be very sure about the post-operative refractive error that you may get. Counsel the patient that there may be a hyperopic shift in the post-operative period due to swelling of the incisions. Thank you so much. And this is my book that will be released today in the award ceremony. This is my 20 years of hard work which I put in oculoplasty. मेरा screen क्यों हटा दिया? Screen क्यों बंद कर दिया आपने? Screen कर दो. चल, thank you.
Dr. Ruchi, congratulations for this book.
She will take rest and leave. One more you have? No?
So on Dr. Ruchi's presentation, I would just add one or two small points of practical interest. That whenever we do an IUL power calculation in a case of pre-LASIK on RK, most of us don't have the fancy gadgets. Of course, if you have them, Shamas is a very good option and the other softwares. But if you don't have it, and you just have a routine biometer, an ultrasonic biometer, then a kind of a rule of the thumb is that in RK, like she said, add about 1.5 to 2 of your biometric power, and in LASIK, add about 3 to your biometric power. This is where you should be naturally. But when you do your IUL calculations with all these software, sometimes they give you a totally different reading. And there you have to use your common sense that, nay, this reading should be somewhere like add 1.5 or add 3. So if this is the reading I'm getting like lower than the actual biometric power or very high, then there is something wrong in your calculation. So you have a mental picture, and your final Shamas or Barrett's should give you a picture which is close to what you expect, and then follow those formulas. Thank you.
And now again a very important topic, the young surgeon from Allahabad, and he will be talking about managing pre-existing astigmatism. So that is again a very, very important topic for all of us, that if we can correct the astigmatism which a person already have, or we don't induce the extra astigmatism, so he will give you the tips that where to place the incision, what depth and what. So Dr. Pranav, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. At the outset, I would like to thank AIOS and Dr. Malik, sir, Dr. Ruchi ma'am, Dr. S.P. Singh, sir, and Dr. Sanjay, sir, and Professor Kamaljeet Singh, sir, for giving me this opportunity. So I'll be speaking about astigmatism management. So as we all know that technological advances in ophthalmology has grown by leaps and bounds. And it is not only our duty to improve the patient's vision, but also to refine it. And a proper management of astigmatism can lead to excellent visual outcomes and to achieve emetropia as the target nowadays. So what are the goals of the surgery? It is mainly painless visual recovery, spectacle independence, correction of pre-existing astigmatism, repeatability of a surgical result, and sustained quality of vision. So coming to the basics, as we all know that against the rule, astigmatism is the one that we deal with in cataract patients and in the older patients. So we'll deal with that. And what are the factors affecting astigmatism in SICS? So they are mainly incision characteristics, the use of cautery, the use and non-use of suture. And we'll deal with all the other factors individually. So the most important thing is that we should give a proper pre-operative assessment of pre-existing astigmatism, because accordingly we'll manage it. So how do we measure astigmatism? We can do it with retinoscopy, keratometry, and corneal topography. Corneal topography is the one that we use these days. But manual keratometry still has a role, and it is used in patients where there is poor fixation, corneal abnormalities, distorted Meyers, and highly toric cornea. In rest of the cases, we usually go for topography. So how do we correct astigmatism in SICS? Mainly, these are the characteristics. The size of the incision, the larger the incision, the greater the flattening, and the smaller the incision, the lesser the flattening. So the larger the incision, the more the astigmatism, and smaller the incision, the lesser the astigmatism. The distance from the cornea is also very important. The farther the incision from the cornea, the lesser the astigmatism, and vice versa. So this was based on a concept which was given by Cox, and he said that the target should always be to hit the astigmatically neutral zone. So what is the astigmatically neutral zone? It is mainly derived from two important equations, as we've already talked about, that surgically induced astigmatism is directly proportional to the length of the incision to the power cube, and it is also related to the distance of incision from the corneal center. So the concept is based, like the funnel is based at the limbus, and as it moves away, it widens. And if we make an incision here, it should be astigmatically neutral. So this was quoted by Cox at that point. So the other thing that we should be aware of is the incision type. There are multiple incision types. We can go for a superior incision, temporal incision, or a superior-temporal incision. Superior incision are the ones which are easier to learn, and during post-graduation days, we used to give superior incision. There is better wound protection and lesser foreign body sensation. In temporal incision, we correct the astigmatism because we've already talked about that against the rule, astigmatism is the most common one that happens. It is easier in the deeper socket patient. It is also easy in small eyes, and the best thing is that it preserves the conjunctiva which is there in the superior end, which may be useful for a future trabeculectomy. So the site of incision is important, and the concept is based on coupling, which states that flattening effect is achieved at the tissue and steepening is produced 90 degrees away. And this, if we give an incision at any place, it is usually, the size is 6.5 millimeter incision, it usually gives around -1 to 1.5 diopter of astigmatism. So again, when we flatten one meridian of the cornea, we will steepen the other meridian, as stated by the coupling rule. So this was a study which was done to see how much surgically induced astigmatism is seen in SICS. And it was seen that superior temporal one was the one which gave the least amount of astigmatism. And superior one is the one which gives the most amount of astigmatism. The incision length is also very important. The larger the incision, as we already talked about, gives a larger amount of astigmatism, surgically induced. So the other thing is cautery. In SICS, usually many places use cautery, and excessive cautery can increase astigmatism due to scleral shrinkage and scleral necrosis. So we should be aware of that, and we should do very minimal cautery in all the cases. So how to correct this pre-existing astigmatism? Mainly in mild astigmatism, we should always operate on the steeper axis. It can be neutralized by changing the site of the incision. So wherever the steeper axis is on the corneal topography or the keratometer, whichever you have, we have to operate on the steeper axis. The other thing is limbal relaxing incision, which are given at 90% depth, and it is around 600 mu depth, and it is given on the steeper meridian, as we've talked about, and it should be given just in front of the limbus. So this is a video depicting a limbal relaxing incision. So we make the tunnel after making the incision, and we do not enter the anterior chamber right now. And to cancel out the surgically induced astigmatism, we can make a limbal relaxing incision on both sides. So it is imperative to check the calculations to prevent any mishap, and usually a 90-degree off is the most common error. There are multiple nomograms given. There are online calculators also which you can do to see for the limbal relaxing incisions. Whatever amount of astigmatism you want to correct, you can just put the settings, and it will give you the amount of LRI that you have to do. So this is another Miller's nomogram. There is Gill nomogram. All of these can help in giving the limbal relaxing incision and planning the surgery. So what are the advantages of LRIs? It is mainly that it gives a lesser tendency of shift in the resultant cylindrical axis. It gives lesser tendency for irregular corneal flattening and irregular astigmatism, which are mostly seen in arcuate incisions. It is easier to perform than shorter and centrally placed corneal relaxing incision, and it is consistent with the coupling ratio, which we talked about. So the last method that we can use is opposite clear corneal incision. This was a theory which was given by Liver and Dahn, and they modified the standard approach to the clear corneal incision and adding an identical incision on the opposite side. So the technique involves creating two biplanar incisions, which are around 3.2 millimeter and 180 degree from each other. If it is a SICS case, then we can make another incision on the opposite end. The only problem is that there is lack of predictability, there is absence of nomograms in this, and there are also increased chances of endophthalmitis because we are making such a huge opening there. So in conclusion, preoperative astigmatism, if the astigmatism is less than 1 diopter, we can make a frown incision, a normal incision in the astigmatically neutral zone to reduce the surgically induced astigmatism. And in a case of a moderate case, we give a small incision along the steeper meridian, about 6 millimeter, and straight in relation to the limbus, because that will correct higher amount of astigmatism. And in cases where there is higher amount of preoperative astigmatism, we can give a combination of LRIs, opposite clear corneal incisions, and the incision profile. So post-operative, we can manage with astigmatic keratotomy, wound revision, and excimer laser. So the take-home message is that careful identification should be done, and a pre-operative examination is a must. Astigmatism correction techniques are best chosen with the step-ladder approach, which I have already shown. And these techniques can be combined to give a higher level of correction, and we should always apply the incision on the steeper axis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pandam. The very important topic, and I think worth following, that we can correct, like in my life, I have never used the toric lens, my patient can't buy and I would manage without toric lens. So in the SICS, I never really needed the toric lens. ये फेको वाले तो रोज डालते हैं right left और everyday toric because it's an expensive thing, not cheap. So
Finally, I invite Professor KPS Malik, the master of SICS surgery, and as you all know that he is called the father of SICS in India, and I learned all my techniques from him, and I produced my book before he could. so so he says that you are very, very great learner in that sense. So now we have, he'll be speaking first on secondary IOL and then on phaco trap, which is the topic of Dr. Richu Goyal. Professor KPS Malik is a very, very down-to-earth person and loves us all and keeps on praising us. Although he is such a big shot, he has been president of AIOS, professor and head of ophthalmology at Safdarjung, professor and head at Meerut, Subharti Medical College, and then AIMS Rishikesh. So he is a great pioneer and a living legend with us. Professor Malik, sir, please.
लोड किया हुआ उसमें यार. शुरू ले वापस ले जाओ. यहाँ से मारो ना. इसको क्या करना? So secondary IOL is one topic really that we need to do that many times, but most people I believe that it is not easy really. And secondary IOLs which have been in the vogue even now also, that somebody's, and why you need secondary IOL is there are many patients like operated for ICC and then they come for another eye has been operated for IOL, then this eye we do it, then traumatic aphakias, and there are many patients like during phaco or SICS that you drop the nucleus, tear the capsules and all. So you need to do the secondary IOL. And secondary IOL techniques are many, but secondary IOL, which I do believe is the solid, robust, and life-lasting, that not in iris, if you clip the lenses either anterior or posterior, iris tissue is not good enough or strong enough to hold the lens for life. I have seen the lens in a child clipped in a traumatic cataract of a young child in anterior chamber, iris clip lens, and then found that one end of it gave it and it was rubbing the cornea, and cornea became like bad, and of course the lens was to be removed and secondary IOL had to be done. So I'm talking of secondary IOL, which is scleral fixation, and there are so many methods. You might have read that you can do the scleral fixation within the eye, without scleral fixation, without making the sclera opening and all that. But I believe that this one is, my method is strong, and so this is basically that you make a scleral flaps 180 apart. You can do at 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you can do 9 and 3 o'clock, and you make the mark there, and then flaps should be good enough, big enough, not the just minor flaps. You see, this might go to up to 3-4 millimeters behind, and then you cut it from limbus and dissect it. So you have to dissect the sclera like lamellar dissection, that you have a lamellar, the scleral bed and a flap lifted from the sclera 180 degree apart. And when tension is good enough now, low tension, you can't dissect the incision. So I will dissect the superior incision area also without entering the IUL. And then the docking of one side, you have a needle with 9-0 nylon, Prolene, nylon, and both can be done, but I use Prolene with it. And then another side is 26 gauge needle. So this needles also you can bend it according to if you are doing it from nasal side, and temporal side is mostly the needle with thread. And then you have these lenses with eyelets. Lots of them are available with eyelet in both the haptics, and right here you suture our suture has gone straight and then bring out and we cut it. So one is go to the upper loop will go to the left and lower loop will go to the right. So this side, like 3 o'clock will get upper loop and 9 o'clock will get the lower loop. And if need be, the air is showing very well, I might have done the vitrectomy. And if need be, after putting the lens also, if you find the vitreous around, you can do the vitrectomy. And then these sutures are pulled, which have been, and these knots have to be many knots in the eyelets of the IOLs so that they don't slip. And of course, I have done it in a routine, and see now, this is anchoring knot, I call it, that the one long thread which is tied with the IOL, but this anchoring is near it, a knot made by a curved needle. So you get the sutures which has long needle and another one is a curved end. So curved needle and long needle in same sutures are available. So this anchoring suture is near the long suture which is holding the lens. So I can tie it with it. That means the lens of haptic is tied with the anchored suture. Now this flap was the posing problem and knots were extruding out. So I devised that I put the one suture behind the flap. So I take one suture, last suture behind the flap, so that flap sits back onto the knot we have created. So this would never expose, never have a chance of endophthalmitis. And most problems of the secondary IOLs were endophthalmitis in Western literature a long time. But this one, anchoring knot on the scleral bed, and the same knot, one thread has been tied with the thread which is holding the lens loop, and last was the behind the flap. So that was, and these patients, these flaps are so well covering the knots. This is another patient. Sometimes nasal side, these small needles are a problem to go into it. So you can break the needle and make it little bent also. So purpose is just to dock it. Needle from that side is long one. That is all right, you can take up to the here. But this needle, 6 o'clock, the 26 gauge needle, sometimes difficult near the nose to manipulate. So you can kind of break its hub and little bit, I have seen that it can get into the ciliary body and it can get in front of the iris. So you have to be careful seeing that. Ciliary body bleedings, little bit like this, you inject the air and it will stop, and then clots there in the last, you can remove the clots also. So massive bleeding you will never get unless you have really inserted into the ciliary body. Then same place, the upper loop and lower loop, and they were put and tied and then taken up. And we can use even a normal PMMA lens if you don't have the eyelet wala lens. and you can tie it in its arm, and you can cauterize the end of the loops so that it doesn't slip. It will become bulbous by little cautery. This is single loop fixation, that is iris. On the 6 o'clock, there was a capsule. You can see little whitish there. So you separate it from the iris by injecting visco between iris and a lower side capsule, and then you tie only upper loop. So upper loop you take behind the iris near the root and then out. So that loop will go behind the iris and not in front of the iris. So technique is right go behind the iris near the root and bring out this suture here. And then this suture in itself has to be twice tied. There are no suture, no second suture, single suture only. This one, of course, will go with the. So one suture is lying, another I gave the knot, another knot, and it is tied itself. So if you cut it, there won't be 4 ends. There will be 3 ends to this suture. There will be 3 ends to this suture, not 4. And if the iris is to be formed, you can pass the McLean suture through, and if there is a iridectomy, the iris has to be made again, pupil has to be made, you can do that. It's an easy one, going from one side of iris, then iris and on limbus, and then you can bring out and tie them. So iris, the pupil can be made out, pupil can be constructed easily. I had once a chance that I did something, I was taking a lens out with a virus vectis and a cutter, and wire vectis caught the 6 o'clock iris, and I pulled it in hurry, and whole iris came. Whole iris means 100% iris came, and that also you can manage. You should not think of it as just bundle of little iris pigment. You can spread it, you can find this is the whole iris and put it in the chamber and make scleral flap 2-3 places, 9 o'clock places, and put the sutures, and you can tie the iris, and you can still make a pupil with a completely torn iris. Completely torn iris can be replaced. That complications you might have, I don't know, got it or not. I got it once and managed it that way. I used to get many complications because I was doing too many surgeries. Thank you so much. And next, again, one more topic of Dr. Ruchi Goyal I have to speak. देखना बेटा इसको ढूंढना जरा.
सर अगर आप पहले बोलते तो पहले ही भीड़ काफ़ी इकट्ठा हो जाती. अगर आप पहले बोलते तो पहले ही भीड़ बहुत आ जाती.
That's the note. That is a compliment, and I'm, sir, thankful for that. My beard generally comes on SICS. Yes. Yes, this one. I'm such a advocate of SICS that, like you have one doctor in Pune who doesn't call it small incision cataract surgery, he calls it smart incision surgery. And he charged more than FECO for it. So combined means generally in our country that doing the separate trabeculectomy and then cataract surgery, or the cataract surgery first, then trabeculectomy. So many opinion about that. If you have to do trabeculectomy and cataract, though so many will say that you do the trabeculectomy first and then do the FECO, or do the trabeculectomy first and then do the SICS. And vice versa. But generally, I would do in one go, whether I do FECO or do SICS, that they can be combined very well, and you can save the 2 surgeries and 2 problems for the patient. You can use the mitomycin, and mitomycin, don't use what is written in the books, use the very, very diluted mitomycin, and if you use it long area of the conjunctiva, then blab will be flat, around flat. It would not be blab would not be balloon-like on 12 o'clock. So your mitomycin should spread in long area of the, under the conjunctiva, on the sclera. So IOL has been placed. And then this is a triangular flap. Generally, I make quadrangular flap. And this technique of cutting two pillars vertically and not making any punch hole by any punch, one parallel, and this is Dr. Ruchi's innovation. She did this, and then I also started doing that. But I generally make the quadrangular big flap for the trabeculectomy. Again, because that will make a blab which is flat, spread out over long area, and not prone for infections like a thin blab. So it won't never be a thin blab. And iodectomy has been done, and then of course you can suture the flap. And these side sutures you can use to stabilize the eyeball or expose the area where you want. So this is your mind that I want to do squint, like in squint we turn the eye to one side, then to this side. Same way anywhere you want to do any surgery and the eye looks like, fornices look narrow. So you can put a suture on limbus to turn the eyeball anywhere you want. So like this has been to expose the upper part, the possibly lids and upper fornix was very shallow. So get this area, I had to put a suture to pull down the eyeball. And then of course conjunctiva can be, generally I suture the conjunctiva continuous, or you can do the interrupted also. But sutures, generally we don't leave this flap unsutured. Fornix-based flap for the trabeculectomy should not be left unsutured. So this is all for today's our session. Nothing else is remaining. And any of you can have the questions from these gentlemen. We have 5-10 minutes to ask any query about the surgeries we showed you, SIC, TRABI, and this is another of the surgery which I labeled as a flying eagle incision. There is a curve, there is a middle quadrangle, and then curve. So this looks like a flying eagle. So this is flying eagle incision. Again, came to my mind someday. Looks like a flying eagle. And then of course rest is same trabeculectomy like we did it. You do the rhexis, and I generally these days do the bilateral rhexis, means bimanual. I take two openings on the limbus. One side I have a needle, another side I have a dialer to guide the rhexis. So rhexis can be controlled if you use the bimanual rhexis. The nucleus is coming, and this is called assisted nucleus. It's a big brown nucleus, and you can do the bimanual irrigation by your phaco things, or you can use the iris AC maintainer one side and simple suction needle from another side. Lens can be injected, and trabeculectomy sutures like in the last time. Trabeculectomy, like we are not cutting holes now with any of the punch, we are cutting straight parallel lines and then cutting that area and doing iodectomy. And flap, this one flap here is again to not that big which I want. I want a bigger flap of the trabeculectomy so that you get a bleb which is spread out. And it looks beautiful, and it never will make a. So thank you very much. I think we have done our time. This is a patient with trabeculectomy already has been done, and we are doing the cataract. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Malik, for a
इनमें से
wonderful.
किसी कोई रैगिंग करना चाहें आप तो you can do that, any of you.
नहीं, ये रैगिंग करने वाले आ गए हैं बच्चे. They have quiz now, so we
We leave the place.
we will leave the place. We hand over the mic to the next session. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary, Dr. S.P. Singh, Dr. Professor Malik, Pranav, and Dr. Ruchi Goyal. Thank you so much. And audience. Although you came late, thank you.
Audience.